My name is Maya Goldstein, and I'm 23 years old. 6 months ago, I was a psychology student at Hebrew University, worried about final exams and weekend plans. Today, I manage a bomb shelter in Sderot that houses 47 families, where my biggest concerns are food distribution, mental health support, and keeping children calm during rocket attacks. The textbooks that once filled my backpack have been replaced by emergency protocols and supply lists. I was born in Sderot, 5 kilometers from Gaza. My mother, Rachel, teaches kindergarten. My father, Moshe, works at a local factory. Growing up here meant growing up with the reality of Zeva Adam, red alert sirens. We had 15 seconds to reach shelter when rockets came. It was just normal life for us. I moved to Jerusalem for university 2 years ago, studying psychology with dreams of becoming a therapist. I loved the freedom of campus life, late night study sessions, coffee with friends, professors who challenged my thinking. For the first time, I lived somewhere the sirens didn't sound every week. My boyfriend Yoni was a computer science student. We met in the library during exam period, bonding over excessive caffeine and stress. He was from Tel Aviv, couldn't understand how I'd grown up with constant security threats. "Don't you want to live somewhere safer?" He'd ask. "Sderot is my home," I'd answer. Someone has to care about these places. October 7th changed everything. I was in my dorm room when my mother called, crying. "Maya, they're attacking everywhere. Rockets, gunmen, kidnappings. Your father is at the factory shelter. I'm at school with the children. We can't leave." I took the first bus south I could find. The ride to Sderot normally took an hour. That day it took 6, with constant stops for rocket alerts, military checkpoints, and roads closed due to infiltration attempts. When I finally reached home, our neighborhood was unrecognizable. Windows broken from rocket impacts, abandoned cars in the streets, families huddled in their safe rooms. The community center had become an impromptu shelter for people whose homes were damaged or who lived too far from proper protection. Mrs. Cohen, who ran the community center, was overwhelmed. She was 67 years old, managing alone with no electricity, limited water, and 15 families already seeking refuge. "Maya," she said when she saw me, "thank God you're here. I don't know how to handle all this." That first night, I helped distribute food, organized sleeping arrangements, and tried to calm terrified children. But Mrs. Cohen collapsed from exhaustion around midnight. The stress, the physical demands, her age, it was too much. An ambulance took her to the hospital. Suddenly, I was in charge. 23 years old, 3 years of psychology classes, and no management experience. 47 people looking to me for leadership during the worst crisis any of us had ever faced. "What do we do now?" asked Mr. Rosenberg, an elderly man whose apartment had been hit by shrapnel. Looked around the shelter, families with young children sleeping on gymnasium mats, teenagers trying to charge phones with limited power, adults whispering anxiously about relatives in other attacked communities. Everything I'd learned about crisis psychology was just theory. This was reality. "We survive," I said. Together, the first challenge was basic organization. 47 people in a space meant for community events, not long-term living. I divided the main hall into family sections using curtains and furniture. Created a children's area with whatever toys and books we could find. Established quiet zones for elderly residents who needed rest. Food was critical. The local grocery stores were closed or damaged. I called every contact I had, former classmates, university friends, my parents' connections. Within 2 days, we had a supply chain organized. My psychology study group from Jerusalem started a fundraising campaign. Yoni drove down with his roommates, bringing supplies and volunteer help, but the real challenge wasn't logistics, it was leadership. These people needed someone to make decisions, to provide stability, to be strong when they felt weak. I was just a college student, younger than most of their children. Why should they trust me? The breakthrough came during our third night. 10-year-old Tamer hadn't spoken since arriving. Her family's house had been directly hit. They'd barely escaped. She sat alone, staring at nothing, completely withdrawn. I sat next to her with my psychology textbook. Want to help me with homework? I asked. She looked at the book, then at me. What's it about? How to help people feel better when bad things happen. She opened the book, started reading about trauma responses in children. This is about me, she said quietly. Yeah, but look at this part. It's about how people heal together. That night, Tamer helped me organize an activity for the other children. The adults watched their kids laughing for the first time in days. They saw that I wasn't just trying to manage them. I was trying to help them heal. From that moment, my role shifted. I wasn't just the person in charge. I was their advocate, their organizer, their psychological first aid provider. I used everything I'd learned about group dynamics, trauma response, crisis intervention, not from textbooks now, but with real people in real crisis. Daily routines became essential. Morning meetings where everyone could share concerns and updates. Scheduled meal times that brought people together. Evening activities for children. Regular contact with elderly residents who needed extra attention. The hardest moments were the rocket alerts. Several times a day, sirens would sound. Everyone would crowd into the reinforced room. 47 people in a space meant for 20. Babies crying. Children terrified. Adults trying to stay calm. I'd lead breathing exercises, tell stories. Anything to keep panic from spreading. During one particularly intense barrage, 8-year-old Ori asked me, Maya, are we going to die? Every adult in the room looked at me. What do you tell a child when you're not sure yourself? We're going to take care of each other, I said. That's what we do here. We're family now. That became our shelter motto. We're a family now. It transformed how people related to each other. Instead of strangers thrown together by crisis, we became a community choosing to support each other. Managing the shelter meant becoming everything to everyone. Crisis counselor for traumatized residents. Logistics coordinator for supplies and volunteers. Mediator for conflicts between stressed families. Medical liaison for elderly residents with health conditions. Activities director for bored children. Security coordinator for safety protocols. Some nights I'd collapse in the small office space I'd claimed, overwhelmed by the responsibility. These people depended on me for their basic needs, their safety, their emotional stability. I was supposed to be studying for midterm exams. Instead, I was responsible for 47lives.yon I visited every weekend, bringing supplies and emotional support. But he couldn't understand the transformation. You're different, he said one night. Older, more serious. I have to be, I replied. These people need me. What about your studies? Your future plans? I looked around the shelter, Mrs. Goldberg teaching origami to children, Mr. Levy organizing a chess tournament, families who'd been strangers now sharing meals and stories. This is my future, I realized. 3 months in, Hebrew University offered remote learning options for students from affected areas. I could continue my degree while managing the shelter, but psychology classes felt different now. Theories about group dynamics weren't abstract concepts, they were tools I used daily. Lectures about trauma weren't academic subjects, they were descriptions of my residents' experiences. The shelter evolved from emergency refuge to temporary community. We established educational programs for children whose schools were closed, created support groups for adults dealing with loss and displacement, organized cultural activities that helped people maintain identity and hope. My parents were proud but worried. Maya, you're 23, my mother said. This is too much responsibility, but I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for: purpose. Every problem solved, every family helped. Every child who learned to smile again proved that leadership wasn't about age or experience. It was about caring enough to act when action was needed. The most challenging resident was Sarah, a single mother with twin 6-year-olds. She'd lost her job, her apartment was damaged, and she was struggling with severe anxiety. She'd snap at other residents, complain about every decision, challenge my authority constantly. One evening, I found her crying alone after another outburst. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to be strong for my kids." "You don't have to be strong all the time," I said. "That's why we're here together." I started meeting with Sarah privately, using therapeutic techniques I'd learned in class. Gradually, she became one of my strongest supporters, helping with activities and mediating conflicts. Her transformation showed everyone that healing was possible. 4 months after October 7th, Mrs. Cohen recovered enough to visit the shelter. She found a thriving community, organized, supportive, resilient. "Maya," she said, "you've created something beautiful here." But she also brought news. The municipal government wanted to transition long-term displaced residents to permanent housing solutions. Our shelter was always meant to be temporary. The decision to close was heartbreaking and necessary. Families needed real homes, children needed schools, adults needed to rebuild their lives. But we'd become more than neighbors. We were chosen family. The final week was emotional. We organized a farewell celebration, sharing stories about our time together. Mr. Rosenberg gave a speech. Maya taught us that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about caring enough to find them. Tamer, the girl who hadn't spoken for days when she arrived, read a poem she'd written about her shelter family. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Today, 6 months later, I'm back at Hebrew University finishing my degree. But everything has changed. My thesis focuses on crisis leadership and community resilience. I know now that I want to work in emergency management and trauma. Response. The shelter residents stay in touch through a WhatsApp group. Sarah got a new job and apartment. Tamer is thriving in school. Mr. Rosenberg started a neighborhood support network in his new building. The community we built continues, just in different locations. Yoni and I broke up amicably. He was right, I had changed. The woman who returned to Jerusalem wasn't the same psychology student who'd left 6 months earlier. I'd discovered capabilities I didn't know. I had purposes I didn't know I needed. Last month, I was invited to speak at a conference about crisis leadership. Standing at the podium, looking at an audience of experienced emergency managers and social workers, I felt that familiar imposter syndrome. Who was I to teach these experts? Then I remembered Tamer's question during our first week. "Maya, how do you know what to do?" "I don't always know," I'd answered honestly. "But I care enough to try." That's what I told the conference. Leadership during crisis isn't about having perfect knowledge or unlimited experience. It's about stepping forward when stepping forward is needed, caring enough to learn quickly, and building community even in the worst circumstances. The questions afterward were insightful. How did you handle the stress? What would you do differently? How did you maintain authority despite your age? But the question that touched me most came from a young woman in the audience. "I'm 24 and work in emergency services. Sometimes I feel too young, too inexperienced. How do you find confidence?" I thought about that first night when Mrs. Cohen collapsed and suddenly I was responsible for 47 people. "You don't find confidence," I said. "You build it one decision at a time, one person helped at a time, one problem solved at a time. Next month, I start a master's program in emergency management. The plan is to specialize in shelter administration and community crisis response." The experience managing our shelter taught me that I want to spend my career helping communities survive and heal from disasters. Sometimes I drive through Sderot and see the building that housed our shelter. It's back to being a community center, hosting weddings, bar mitzvahs, children's programs. Normal life has returned, which is exactly what we hoped for, but I carry something permanent from those months, the knowledge that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when circumstances demand it, that 23-year-old psychology students can become community leaders when communities need leading, that families can be chosen, not just born into. The war tested all of us. For some, it revealed strength they didn't know they had. For others, it exposed vulnerabilities that needed addressing. For me, it provided clarity about purpose I'd been searching for without knowing it. I still have the notebook. I used to track shelter operations, meal schedules, supply inventories, resident concerns, daily reports. Sometimes I flip through it and remember specific moments. Ori's first laugh after the trauma, Sarah's breakthrough during our counseling session, the night Mr. Levy organized a sing-along that had everyone crying and laughing. Simultaneously, those pages document more than emergency management. They record the transformation of strangers into family, chaos into community, despair into hope. They show that leadership isn't a title or position, it's action taken when action is needed. My mother still worries about me. Maya, you've seen too much for someone so young. She's right. I've seen families lose everything in minutes. Watch children grapple with trauma no child should experience. But I've also seen the incredible resilience of the human spirit, the way people adapt to unthinkable circumstances, how communities form in the most unlikely places. Next week marks 1 year since October 7th. Many of my former shelter residents are planning a reunion. We want to celebrate not just survival, but the bonds we formed and the strength we discovered. The textbooks say that emerging adulthood is about identity formation, exploring possibilities, feeling in between childhood and full adulthood. Those months managing the shelter compressed that development into intensive experience. I discovered who I am when everything familiar disappears. I learned what I'm capable of when capability is required. The war took away our sense of safety and normalcy, but it gave me purpose, community, and the unshakable knowledge that young people can lead when leadership is needed, that families can be chosen, that home isn't just a place, it's people who choose to take care of each other. The shelter is closed now, but its spirit continues in all of us who live there. We learned that crisis can destroy, but it can also create communities, relationships, understanding about what really matters in life. And that's the most important lesson from those months. We're all capable more than we imagine. When circumstances demand it, 23-year-old students can become community leaders. Strangers can become family. Temporary shelters can become permanent sources of strength. The war continues, but so do we. Change challenged, but ultimately strengthened by the knowledge that we can take care of each other when taking care of each other matters most. That's leadership. Not having all the answers, but caring enough to find them. Not being fearless, but acting despite fear. Not being perfect, but being present when presence is needed. I am still here, still learning, still leading when leadership is needed. And I always will be